Thank you very much. Salam Pagi, everybody. Good morning, and I think this is a very interesting topic. I think Mahendra earlier talked about PDP. I mean, I couldn't understand obviously a lot of Bahasa what he spoke, but I know what the intention of what he talked about was to basically that this is a very important and critical topic, and something that a lot of our clients globally are grappling with. Of course, GDPR being one of the first things globally that kind of came out, but something that is really kind of becoming an important topic. So in my role, I essentially work as the business unit head for cybersecurity. Spent about 23, 24 years in security as a career, right from the start. I have the privilege of being a SOC analyst 21 years back. So I have been through all the nuts and bolts of security, right from the career, engineering, SOC analyst, consulting, management roles, and then of course now the business unit role. I'm also a subject matter expert in the field, although very difficult to call yourself an expert in a very evolving field like security and privacy, but I try to keep up with all the updates as we go along. So I have kind of a 30-minute slot today. I'll be talking about a few things on threat landscape, what we are seeing globally. I'll also be talking about the DPP approach, the data protection and privacy approach that we use for our global clients, including some of our Indonesian clients. Then of course touch upon the entire security portfolio that we have, because for me it's very important for you to also appreciate that you cannot have privacy without security. Right, when you talk about data privacy, you have to have data security built in by design. So I'll talk about the entire security portfolio and obviously the privacy one, and then some key takeaways. So please bear with me as I go along, and please do have your food in parallel. I think the food is being served, so please feel free to continue with that as well. Let's just talk about some of the threat landscape. Now this is something hot off the press. While we have our own way of kind of looking at the global telemetry of cyber threats, breaches, everything that happens around the globe, even large global organizations, not-for-profit, World Economic Forum talks about some key challenges that they are seeing. And if you really look at it, starts with obviously the geopolitical tensions, and of course cybercrime sophistication, supply chain, and very importantly regulatory requirement. Of course, Indonesian government has also put in place penalties and requirements on compliance with respect to data protection. I think it was done in October or November last year, 2024, and it's in place now, right? But the key message out here is, while all the security breaches are happening, there is a shift in the industry, and that shift is basically about digital transformation, and for rightful reasons, right? Digital transformation is something that organizations are going through, but the entire amount of data that organizations are collecting for doing data intelligence, for understanding patterns, understanding how their clients, their partners interact, and extract intelligent action items from that data. Obviously they have to retain that data and collect the data, but is that data being secured and kept in safe custody is a bit of a question mark. When we do data breach investigations, in fact one of the big, not one of the big, but one of the banks in Indonesia recently had a breach, and they asked us to investigate. Not only they had a malware situation, but they actually had financial fraud alongside it. So not just the customer data was compromised, but even financial fraud was conducted. So money was also lost from customer accounts. The thing I'm trying to make is that even let's say you see ransomware attack, and that's something mentioned here, right? Cybercrime sophistication. Ransomware as a service is the new terminology. And clients grapple with it because what happens is when you have ransomware attack nowadays, it's not just about encrypting data. It's called double extortion attacks. So what they do is they steal information first and they encrypt information later. Because the moment you see a ransomware screen, we have encrypted your data, you have to pay up. By that time it's too late, right? It's too late already. So I think the question is that how do you protect data? How do you define your business processes in the first place to handle data? Enhance data privacy. I was talking to Tony earlier, and I think he'll be on the panel later. privacy is not as simple as implementing a technology piece. It's much wider. It's a cultural change that you need to drive in an organization. Anyways, so maybe I'll just give a small video for you to take a look. It's a wonderful one. Just watch this first.
That has convinced you that your microphone is listening to your conversations. All of your interactions, your credit card swipes, web searches, locations, likes, they're all collected in real time into $1 trillion a year industry.
The real game changer was Cambridge Analytica. They worked for the Trump campaign and for the Brexit campaign. They started using information warfare.
Cambridge Analytica claimed to have 5,000 data points on every American voter.
I started tracking down all these Cambridge Analytica ex-employees.
Someone else that you should be calling to committee is Brittany Kaiser.
Brittany Kaiser, once a key player inside Cambridge Analytica, casting herself as a whistleblower.
The reason why Google and Facebook are the most powerful companies in the world is because last year data surpassed oil in value. Data is the most valuable asset on Earth. We targeted those whose minds we thought we could change until they saw the world the way we wanted them to.
I do know that their targeting tool was considered a weapon.
There is a possibility that the American public have been experimented on.
This is becoming a criminal matter. When people see the extent of the surveillance, I think they're going to be shocked.
And I still fear for your life.
Yeah,
Like the powerful people that are involved.
but I can't keep quiet just because only powerful people matter.
Data rights should be considered just fundamental rights.
This is about the integrity of our democracy. These platforms which were created to connect us have now been weaponized. It's impossible to know what is what, because nothing is what it seems.
Alright, the point I'm trying to make here with this video is to basically just showcase how the power of data that is so important for organizations can always be misused and abused, which is exactly why the Indonesian government did the right thing to really put a very strong handle on how data is being collected, processed, transmitted and shared with individuals, with companies. And this is just one example of how it can be abused. This is a wonderful documentary called The Great Hack. You can watch it later if you like. But what are the key data protection challenges? The first one is obviously there is a lot of constant regulatory changes, and it's not like one government does this. In fact, in Singapore, where I'm based, the government has actually gone through a lot of changes on their Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, right? They've gone through changes. They had one iteration, then second iteration, they improve it, and they keep on, kind of updating it. So there is one constant challenge that organizations would face to continue making sure that they are complying with it and they are keeping up with it. Secondly, obviously, you can't do everything yourself in your organization. You work with supply chain providers, you work with third parties. Are those third parties also making sure that they keep your data, your consumers' data, your client data, your employees' data as safe as you would like it to be? So that's another challenge that because of the supply chain element coming into play. And then of course, the whole data management, right, is also critical in terms of the data life cycle. There is a lack of understanding sometimes. Like I mentioned earlier, right, it's a cultural change. Data privacy is not just you implement a tool and voila, it works. No, it's not like that. It's a journey that an organization has to go through. And then of course, not just that, but also because a lot of people, a human element is involved, it requires a lot of training. And of course, human errors can happen. Challenges can happen because of, let's say, insider threat. And insider threat is not just about bad guys trying to do bad things. It's just like it could be good guys who have done bad things because of mistake. Right? It was an error. And that's why they need protection and somehow controls implemented by design. I mean, this is just one snapshot of why this is important, because no single organization is immune to breaches and data breaches and data attacks. There are many Indonesian companies, as you know, there on the chart. And it's not to put them in the bad light, right? No, that's not the purpose. The purpose is to showcase that no organization is immune from data breaches. The important is, have you put the right guardrails? Have you put the right controls by design in your process, people and technology elements, so that when something like this happens, you are prepared. So the concept is not about preventing data breaches. Yes, you will try your best, but the important point today is, are you prepared for such a scenario? How will you react? What would you do? And which controls will you exercise? Globally, a lot of statistics here. You look at it, right? The global cost of cybercrime is projected to reach 10.5 trillion US dollars, right? Almost a CAGR of 15%. I mean, I'm getting my targets for next year, and I can tell you getting a 15% YOY increase itself is a big one. But this one is going at a pace of 15% targets. Average cost of data breach is 4.88 million, again increasing 10%. A lot of information, almost half, includes personally identifiable information in the attacks, in the breaches, right? And I think, of course, this is about a lot of delays in how companies identify data breach, let alone they want to contain it. It takes even more time. I won't go through everything, but I think this is again very, very important. 98% of the organizations have at least one vendor that suffered a data breach. That goes to the point of supply chain risk. That if you are using a lot of third parties, you need to make sure you work with the right organizations. Because, in fact, I was talking to a CIO yesterday. I'm meeting a lot of clients during my visit from Singapore right now. And one of the CIOs, said, and I asked them, they do a lot of outsourcing on security, and they said, how about typical stuff like penetration testing your applications? They said, yeah, we just do an RFP and basically we just go with the cheapest vendor. And I was like, okay. Yeah, he said, because it's a commodity, right? It's just a simple penetration test. It's just rocket science. I said, yeah, I agree. But what if, and we are already seeing this in the market on dark web, what if the assessor or the tester does not disclose all the findings to you and only disclose some, and actually sells other findings in dark web for hundreds and thousands of dollars? Can, right? So maybe you will give that company $20,000 for doing an assessment, and $200,000 is what that company will gain for selling your vulnerabilities in the dark web. So you will pay millions of dollars during the next ransomware attack. Right? Just so be careful on who you work with, and that's why working with respectable companies is very important. Data privacy landscape in APAC is really changing big time. You can see, right? It's not just a European thing anymore. It's not American anymore. Not just state of California or maybe just the GDPR in Europe. No. Across Asia Pacific, a lot of legislations have been put together. A lot of legislative priorities containing data breaches, mandatory notification of data breach in hours, sometimes, not days, sometimes hours, right? Governance and regulations on AI. How many of you heard about DeepSeek? All of you probably, right? But did you know DeepSeek also had a breach? Maybe because it was a Chinese company, so it was in the newspapers. But did you know Copilot GitHub also had a data breach? It was also happening in January, just 10 days back. Maybe that news was not so widely covered because it's just an American technology sometimes, right? So, keeping the geopolitical state aside, you need to be informed which technologies are you using, and more importantly, how are you sharing your data with those technologies? And that goes back to the point of putting governance when you're leveraging the power of AI. AI is a wonderful tool. It's just like internet. When internet came, people said, oh, it's harmful, it'll damage this and that. But look at the digital transformation that has happened. Similarly, we are in the age of AI now. With respect to Indonesia, I think obviously you are probably even more informed than me, but I think there are key provisions in the Indonesian PDP with respect to lawfulness, fairness, transparency, minimization of data and accuracy and other things. And then of course individual rights. People like you and me having that level of control on how our data is being processed and handled. And very important, right? Not just you have to have data protection policies, you have to have a data protection officer, as well as there are provisions for administrative sanctions. So I'm just basically sharing, my Indonesian colleagues actually helped me because the law is very local and it's in local language, so they helped me kind of demystify this. And there are two types of categories. So one is about collectors and processors of personal data to comply with it, and the second is actual individual companies that engage in such kind of bad activities. So there are provisions on legal sanctions, administrative deletion, as well as severe sanctions with respect to I think 6 years of imprisonment and fine of up to 60 billion Indonesia rupiah, right? Massive compliance and kind of requirements with respect to penalties, I would say. Okay, so keeping that point aside on the threat landscape, overview of how the entire landscape is changing, what is NTT Data's approach about data protection? Well, it is definitely not this. This is not our approach, right? This is a cartoon. But basically the point I'm trying to make is that just by making some small changes here and there and saying, I'm not going to use my real name, there are many other telemetry. You heard that in the Great Hack video, right? 5,000 data points is what Cambridge Analytica had on every individual to pinpoint uniquely on who that person was to influence the voting patterns in US. And this is public knowledge, right? But what is our approach? So what we do is, there are obviously 4 key tenets of DPP. One is transparency, fairness, ethical activities, and being lawful. And how we convert that is essentially, we do it by 2 parts, right? One is how we drive data protection by design, and then very importantly how we do it. So from a transparency perspective, making sure that we have informed the entities, informed the stakeholders, make it controlled. And then of course, what we do is, this is what you do. You put in privacy notices, you have a consent, and we basically have experts who actually, from a consulting perspective, can help you, because this is not easy job. Like I said, it's not just about implementing a technology and switching out something and it works like with a magic. It requires process change, policy change, cultural change in an organization, right from just implementing all these controls that you see, from transparency, fairness, ethical actions, and lawfulness, including obviously data privacy impact assessments, DPP policies, and other stuff with respect to assessment and reporting. I won't spend time into personal data. I hope everybody knows about personal data, but it's not just something that can identify a specific individual, but it could be a collection of information that could collectively help to identify a person uniquely, right? So it could be in a way connecting few dots, like this plus name plus surname plus workplace of work plus email could uniquely identify a person. So that's exactly what personal data or personally identifiable information means. This is a very important slide. I think something that I would want to personally say as a practitioner in the industry, there is a difference between privacy and security. Right? There is a very clear difference. One, obviously, you see these are the 4 tenets of transparency, fairness, ethical activities, and lawfulness. Security is different, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability, but they are connected. The good point is, while they are different, but they do overlap, because some of the activities that you would have to do from fairness, from ethical, and from lawfulness, you need to protect the information, and that protection element comes from confidentiality, integrity, as well as availability of information. They are kind of connected to each other, right? Now, if I move on to, let's say, what we do, we basically help organizations support an end-to-end journey on data protection. So right from our data protection and privacy consulting to actually implementing technology from data security, encryption perspective, we have our own technology as well, which is something we do. We spend about $100 million every year on cybersecurity research and innovation. $100 million every year, right? Because of that, we then develop these niche technologies that we only sell to our select clients. We don't sell it in the mass market. We don't provide that. And then of course, IT security, architecture, and operations, because no matter how many controls you can implement, you have to continuously maintain, monitor, detect, and protect and respond to the threats, because threats will keep coming in. They will keep coming in. You cannot prevent threats to come in and attack them. Sorry, go back. This is very important, that end-to-end portfolio, right? So from consulting, whether it is architecture, assessment, advisory work, implementing stuff. We have people in Indonesia team locally, right? Not just somebody from Singapore flying in, but we have people in Indonesia locally who can actually implement, integrate, and design solutions on DPP and security, as well as support and managed services. So I'll talk about that later. This is just a snapshot of how our consulting team typically starts. Like I said, it's a very human intellect type of engagement. You have to understand from workshops how a data is gathered, in what forms it is collected, how it is processed, how it is transmitted, which other systems from the core system are satellite systems that actually interact with that data, understand the data flow, and then the entire data life cycle from cradle to grave, right? Complete data life cycle. And that's how we work with understanding the entire thing to do assessment, mitigation strategies. So this is just something that our consulting team does, and I personally own that team as well, so we can always look at if you have would like to explore that. Now, something that we have our own intellectual property, which is about things like attribute-based encryption. This is something quite cutting edge. So in the past, you used to have conventional encryption, where you have data is just protected. Either it is protected or it is not protected. So it's at a database level encryption. But what we have done is, we have recently, about I think 1.5 years back, we released this solution called attribute-based encryption, ABE, and this basically allows you to actually go granular, very, very granular on actual data element, not just the entire data set. So you can, rather than having a binary 0 or 1 on encryption, you can pinpoint which data element you want to encrypt. So this not only reduces your cost of controls, but also makes it much faster and seamless to implement. This is a snapshot of our own proprietary portal of consulting advisory services. So when our consultants work on, let's say, a maturity assessment on data privacy, they actually use a proprietary internal portal, which is mapped with things like the NIST and the data protection requirements, global, let's say, legislations like GDPR, of course, PDPA, and Indonesia PDP. We combine all that, and using that we basically create a maturity score. We compare you with benchmarking, and then we come out with actual projects. So you have a very methodical way of going back to your senior leadership and board members and saying, look, we have done a proper assessment. It's not like we are coming to you ad hoc, we need money for this project, we need money for this because of XYZ reason. But we have done a proper assessment to understand the risk, and then look at the maturity where we are, where we should be, and this is the roadmap. And this is the roadmap, then the management can sign off. So you can basically have a, end of the day, risk-informed approach to your data protection and privacy with your management. This is another solution we have called Secura. This is on, again, privacy and integrity protection platform. Again, I can't spend time on a very short presentation, but I'm just giving you some snapshots. This is again a solution which basically gives you complete ABE built in the solution, as well as also anonymization and secure multi-party computation, right? So you can actually work with third parties without being worried about data being stolen and kind of leaked. So there's one solution here, and then one more from our Technocross. So you can see all these are entity group companies. So again, there are solutions available. You can see this is in Japanese, so obviously a lot of work happens in Japan from a research perspective, but something that we have in terms of anonymized processing of data. Again, another solution. Happy to discuss that offline, but like I said, I can't spend too much time on that today. So why entity data? Why would you want to work with us? Like I said, security and privacy are integrated to each other. And what we have is something that I think what was the main reason why I joined NTT was because of the depth and width of our portfolio. Very, very comprehensive, right from the consulting to technology solutions, which is basically advisory, assessment. You have design, implement, integrate. Then you have the entire monitoring and management of controls and threats, as well as forensic services. I gave an example earlier about the forensic work we are doing in Indonesia, right? So that's just a snapshot, and we work with all the top key partners, of course, also with HPE Aruba on certain things with respect to, let's say, network security, and I think some of my colleagues will later from HPE talk about the SASE solution that they have. And then, of course, not just that, right? We have global credentials. So it's not just, don't believe me, right? Believe the governments. Singapore government endorses us for what we do. We have a license holder on cybersecurity services from Singapore government, that's on the left. This is from Malaysian government. This was done just 3 months back. This is from Indian government. This was done 2 months back, right? So we have actually complied with very stringent requirements from at least the 3 countries in APAC. I don't think Indonesia has a licensing regime at this point. Otherwise, we will apply for that also. And then globally, we are CREST certified organization, and we are payment card industry qualified security assessor. So if you go to the Google and you search for PCI QSA and you search entity, you will see our name listed, including my name as the point of contact. And the reason for that is cardholder data and personally identifiable information are very similar in terms of the protections they need, very similar. So we are actually very certified on PCI data or cardholder data protection, and hence makes sense for us to obviously offer solutions on personal data and privacy. Just a snapshot of some of our capabilities. Again, happy to give you these things offline. You can talk to your client managers. I'm also here on the event. Please feel free to come and talk to me about these things. Second pillar, remember, let me go back quickly. So remember this slide, 4 pillars, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll go through them quickly. So on the first pillar, we basically have the entire security consulting. On the second pillar, we have technology solutions. So why? Again, certified people on actual OEM technology, all top of the line, including HPE Aruba, Cisco, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, Fortinet, and so on and so forth. Deep, wide and in-country coverage, right? And local capabilities available, right? Install base as well as OEM partnerships on major areas, all major areas, whether it is infrastructure security, whether it is application data security, or even OT, operational technology security, as well as security operations. This is the pillar number 3 on our managed detection response. Massive portfolio. Not just monitoring your infrastructure and saying reactive stuff, right? Actually doing threat hunting in your environment. So we do a lot of stuff. You get this as a package: SOC analyst, threat hunters, forensic analyst, information security manager, service delivery manager, and threat intelligence expert. A very big portfolio. All of this is available in Indonesia today, right? I'm not talking about fusion. This is all available today. And then last but not the least is forensics. Anything you do, things can still go wrong, right? Snow can still hit the fan. And then when that happens, you need somebody who really is an expert to investigate, and not just investigate, but actually contain, stop the bleeding, and help you to get over that incident, because, like I said, it can happen. And I've been a forensic investigator myself. On at least 7 years of my career, I was a forensic investigator. It's a hard job, very hard job. Every Friday evening, your weekend is gone. Every Friday evening. Typically, the breaches happen on that day, mostly. But we have a good package of SLA services, so we can actually talk to you if you want. Not just reactive forensics, but compromise assessment and proactive forensics as well. Okay, my last slide. Thank you for having patient listening to what I said earlier, but just my last slide. I think why you should talk to NTT Data on data protection and privacy is because of not just our capabilities, but something that we have done globally with a lot of clients, right? And we can bring that because remember, right, like I'm a regional leader for Asia Pacific, I have my counterparts in Europe and US. So when, let's say, there is a critical client requirement, we basically have our connections back to pull back information. We use central repository, look, internal intellectual property to leverage and basically help organizations in the, whether it is retail, whether it is a bank, whether it is insurance, or even telecom, and so on and so forth. And then of course, like I said earlier, not just basically having huge expertise and partnership on consulting, professional services, support services, managed services, but unparalleled threat intelligence. Remember, we are a tier 1 global telco at our core. 67% of Asia Pacific telecom traffic flows through our backbones. That helps us to capture a lot of threat intelligence that not many organizations can boast about, right? Because we see what's going on. Because at the end of the day, I'm a big believer in this saying that I like a lot, is that a system can lie. When a system gets compromised, it can give you wrong logs, false logs, maybe wrong information, wrong evidence, but network will never lie. You can encapsulate things in network, you can encrypt data, you can package it in a tunnel, but still it will have to travel from one point to another. And that's when you can decipher and connect the dots and go to the basics. And then of course we are recognized very widely with the industry. So that's all I have, but thank you for listening to us, and I think our partner HPE Aruba will also have a good presentation on security, but I appreciate your time and have a wonderful lunch. I'm here, please do ask me questions later, please do reach in touch with your client managers and salespeople. More than happy to support you. Terima kasih. Thank you.